Um, what's our intro? Welcome.
Adrian, thanks for coming in today. Thanks for tattooing my arm, which was great.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy with that. It came out really cool.
Oh, hopefully I'm not blocking the camera there.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Nailed it.
this is your first tattoo right now. So you're obviously a tattoo artist, but you're also not from Australia. But maybe give us a bit of background on what got you to here.
Okay. I am a tattoo artist. I've been tattooing since 1999. I apprenticed under Don Giesman, and I got my professional career kind of really going in about 2003. I developed a friendship with a good friend, Nick Baxter. We studied tattooing together and kind of learned hand in hand for a long time. I ended up meeting my wife, Laura Marshall, at a tattoo convention in 2012, at the end of 2012. After a 3.5 year long distance relationship, I got working on my permanent residency visa for, the Distinguished Talent in the Arts visa, just some weird impossible visa that nobody was supposed to be able to get, but I got it. And now I live in Australia. I live in the Gold Coast. I lived in Melbourne for about 5 years and moved to Gold Coast at the end of 2020.
Mm-hmm. And you guys met at your second shop?
Yeah, so I think, when was the first time we met? Do you remember?
We both worked at a shop. That was the first shop that I worked at when I moved to Melbourne. And I think that you were finishing your apprenticeship there. I'm not sure exactly like what day we met, but yeah, we met pretty quickly as soon as I started working there, and probably even the first day that I was there.
I remember before you came in, the shop owner was like, I've got this really good artist coming down from America. He's super good. He's super well known. And I was like,
And then I turned up, huh?
no, I was really nervous to meet you.
Way to oversell it, huh? Way to oversell it.
No, he was right. You are an amazing artist. Maybe tell us about how you got into tattooing. Obviously, like, it's been a long time, so maybe just like a brief rundown of your tattoo career.
Sure. When I was in high school, I come from a graffiti background. I've been doing graffiti since I was like 12 years old. I'm from WGS Crew out of Los Angeles, and HBM, Hated by Many Gang, out of Phoenix, Arizona. I was designing a lot of tattoo designs for my friends and people in high school. Started seeing them get those tattoos. They came back looking not as good as I remember drawing them, and immediately I arrogantly thought, I can do this better. And I decided that I wanted to study a bit more about it. I actually had 3/4 scholarship to go to the Art Institute of Phoenix. I was going to study special effects and monster makeup, concept design, things like that. And I wasn't able to get the last quarter of my scholarship, so that scholarship fell through. And I decided to go look for an apprenticeship. Well, as an 18-year-old looking around for an apprenticeship, especially in the late 90s, as you can imagine, there was not a lot of people who was willing to take on that apprenticeship. And I got lucky by finding the person that taught me in the shop that I learned at. I didn't end up lasting more than, I think it was like 7.5 months before I was asked to leave, and I wasn't able to complete my apprenticeship. So I just kind of took it upon myself to keep pushing from there.
Was there a reason for that?
Yeah, so it was because of a question that was asked. I still remember it explicitly, like the question that was asked. So I was asking about, I was doing a very traditional apprenticeship in that I was, scrubbing tubes. I was cleaning the shop. I was showing up early to, set everything up. I was setting everybody's stations up, breaking them all down. I was making all of their needles by hand. I learned how to make needles.
Classic apprentice. Tattoo apprentice.
Exactly. I was tracing every bit of flash on the wall. Like, that was part of my job, was when there was nothing happening, I would pull a sheet of flash off the wall. It was a very traditional style tattoo shop, and I would trace all the flash, in particular, all the flash that didn't have designs that were in the file folder in the back. Back then, you can walk into the shop and you can pick, I want number 75 off the wall, and we had that in the file folder in the back. You make a photocopy of it, you make the stencil as big as you need it to be based on their budget, and put that on, tattoo it. And so I got asked if I saw myself being a tattoo artist for the rest of my life. And I was honest. I was 18 years old, so I said, I don't know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, because I'm 18 years old, and like the context of what the rest of my life is going to look like, I just didn't have that foresight. Now, fast forward to, what has it been, like 23 years now? And I still tattoo professionally. So I guess technically speaking, I have been a tattoo artist for the rest of my life, but I don't know how long I'm going to live. So we'll see,
Very loaded question.
It's a super loaded question. Absolutely. And because I didn't give the proper response of, yes, I'm going to be a tattooer for the rest of my life, I was asked to leave. So I left, and I respected their wishes. And I was in a kitchen magician for 6 to 8 months or so before I ended up getting another job at a shop called Desert Rose. I worked there for, I think it was about 6 to 8 months, and I learned the fundamentals of tattooing from two artists, a man named Jason Fogelsong, who ended up starting up a shop in Geneseo, New York called Hot Rod Tattoo, and a man named Jay Zucala, who was a very traditional Americana style tattooer. They taught me the basics of what it took to make a clean, solid, fundamentally strong tattoo. And then from that point, I ended up working for a man named Tom Michaels. He was an old Carney tattooer. He started tattooing in the mid-'70s. He owned a shop called Creative Skin. I worked there for about 2 years. I got poached by this crew from a shop called Phoenix Tattoo Company. I ended up working there for 3 years, managing for them, doing conventions. And through the convention circuit is how I met some of the more notable names in the industry at the time. Ron Earhart, who had tattooed my arm. He was the first person to do like a large scale tattoo on me. And that's how I met Nick Baxter. And when Nick and I met, this would have been in like 2003, 2004. There wasn't a lot of young people that were tattooing and that were successful at it. So we immediately found a kinship in that we were both pursuing high level, painterly style tattoos. And there just wasn't a lot of people doing it. So I was able to kind of piggyback off of where he was at, and I ended up getting a job at the shop that he was at in Connecticut. I moved across the country to go work there, and I ended up getting an apartment right upstairs from him. So it was very much like we were roommates for about a year. And that was a very influential year in my life. I learned a lot more about my identity as a painter. We became very close as friends, and we challenged each other a lot in our development. And I would say that those were probably some of the most pivotal times and influential times for me as a tattooer. And I started working the Hell City Convention in Ohio, especially at the time. It's still a very notable and really well-respected tattoo convention, but at the time, it was really difficult to get a booth. It was something that you had to know somebody, or you had to be grandfathered in. Most of the booths that were occupied were by people who had worked the year before or years previous, so there was only so many booths to go around. So you had to kind of get in. But once I got in, I ended up doing that convention for the better of a decade, and I would say that convention probably provided me with the opportunity to be able to grow and interact with tattooers that were of a caliber that I wanted to achieve, that kind of level of work, and I was aspiring to be around and to work like. And I would say that those were probably some of the key moments in my career, how I got to where I'm at.
And can you? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out in my brain how to word this question.
Take your time.
But can you describe to me like what Hell City Convention is like, as someone who's never done it before?
Hell City Convention. So there's the American Tattoo Convention circuit, especially at the time. There was a lot of them. I imagine that there's still a lot of tattoo conventions now. It's changed substantially, but at the time, I mean, there was literally a tattoo convention every weekend in one city or another. Now that being said, America has
America,
yeah. America has a much larger population for sure, but it also has a much more developed tattoo community in its enthusiasm and the amount of people that are getting tattooed, especially during those particular years. And this particular convention was attracting a client base and a caliber of artists that was typically trying to excel past what the standard or the status quo of what a good tattoo was. For sure, you still had all of the bases covered. There was amazing American traditional tattooers that worked there, amazing tribal tattooers, Japanese style tattooers, the baselines and like the foundational bedrocks of what we know of good quality tattooing. That was all covered there for sure. But you had names like Joe Capobianco, who was doing these really beautiful pinup tattoos at the time. You had this guy named Saint Mark from Psycho Tattoo, who was doing these really highly rendered color portraitures, almost based off of comic book art, really highly rendered. Eric Merrill, who was doing these beautiful new school style tattoos. That was one of the first places that I had met Clean Rock One. Some people know him from one of the tattoo shows that came out a couple. Yeah, there you go. I had seen his work back then, and I was influenced by a lot of that stuff. And of course, the biomechanical artists that I was influenced by. That was the first time that I met Aaron Kane, and I met Guy Atchison was at those conventions. So it attracted a really high caliber of artists that were interested in the work. The guy who puts it on, Derb Morrison, he is also a tattoo artist who aspires to do and is successful at performing really high quality, highly rendered color tattoos. So he has an understanding of what an artist needs when they're in that environment. And it's probably become the standard of what I compare tattoo conventions to when it comes to my expectations. When I go to purchase a booth, or when I'm being hosted at one of these events, in saying that, I don't expect anybody to bend over backwards for me or anything like that. But I know Derb personally, like he's a friend of mine, and I got to talk to him about the details of what it takes to put on one of these events. And in that, I know what it's capable of being. So, not everybody will necessarily agree with my sentiment, but I have a really high standard of what I expect conventions to be, especially when it comes to me spending a lot of money on those conventions, because they should be, because these are experiences from my experience that I feel should cater to a high level experience, so that the community of people who are coming to get tattooed there and experience the environment have the best time possible. And the only way that can happen is by catering to the artists that are working there, because they're essentially, for lack of a better description, they're the talent. It's like if you're going to go to a concert, you want to make sure that the performers are well looked after, so that the performers are having a good time and they have all of their needs met, so that they can just do their job of performing, the music that they perform. The same thing pertains to a tattoo convention,
I have noticed, I know that you've done a couple of tattoo conventions in Australia, maybe not that many, but I've done many. And I have noticed that from what you've told me and from what a few other people from America have told me, or people that have done American conventions, I personally feel like the vibe in the tattoo convention still in Australia feels a little intimidating with the artists. And for example, I would walk up to an artist that I've never met before in Australia, who maybe I look up to, and I've spoken to them, and it's not super friendly. Like you said, you've met a few amazing artists in America. You went and spoke to them. You became friends with them. I think a couple of them, you've even been to their weddings. Like you've become such good friends with them. But here I've walked up to Australian artists, and it's just not a friendly sort of vibe. And I don't know if that's because the artists don't feel like they've been looked after, so maybe they're a bit shitty.
It's not always the case, but
It's not always the case, but there have been American artists that have come down here to an Australian convention, Clean Rock One being one of them.
Sure.
And he was super friendly. I went up to him and he was like, "Hey, nice to meet you. I'm clean." Like,
and also was that other artist, was his name Jamie, who does like the super new school stuff? He was also on Ink Master as well.
no, that's
Are you thinking
Litwalk. Jimmy Litwalk.
No,
Jimmy
not
Litwalk?
Jimmy
No,
Litwalk.
you're thinking.
He's a smaller sort of frame.
Jesse.
Jesse.
Yeah,
Yes.
Jesse Smith.
Yeah.
Wonderful
the nicest,
dude.
One of the
Wonderful
nicest
dude.
people I've
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
met. Yeah.
Yeah, don't even say Jimmy Litwalk's name.
Oh, sorry.
No, I mean,
No, Jimmy's great. Like, I know Jimmy. He's good
but he
people.
wasn't to me.
Oh, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate
But
because
it might have been a bad day or something.
yeah, it might have just been like him having a difficult day, because I know Jimmy personally. Like, he's a good dude for sure. Listen, like as far as it's hard for me to compare the Australian tattoo convention community as far as artists are concerned, and my experience with artists, because I think in general the tattoo industry is like oil and water. It's a very, very different world in Australia. So I don't
Can you like describe for us just some of
Elaborate? I would love to.
some of the ways that you think Australia and America differ in the tattoo industry?
One of the key components in how they differ, I feel like, at least for the community of artists that I come from. We were speaking about it earlier casually, like while we were working together. I feel like I came from one of the best times to be an American tattooer, especially a young American tattooer, because a lot of the people that were coming into it, just like it is in a lot of places in the world, young tattooers have a really tough go getting into the industry, and it's because it's very very gate capped, or gated. People want you to prove yourself, or you have to have a specific type of apprenticeship, or you have to have a specific mindset, and you have to, there's this very kind of like tough and like overly protective aspect of it. And that existed back then too. It still exists to a great degree. So there was a lot of people in the same age group that were just interested in making the best tattoos that we possibly could make. And I think that in that like-minded goal, we couldn't afford to not be cool with each other. A really good example is, I remember the first time that I met Nico Hurtado. Nico Hurtado is a really well-known color portrait artist. A lot of people that are interested in tattoo know this guy's work. And when I first met him, he was working on this Albert Einstein piece. And I remember walking up, watching him tattoo, and he stopped what he was doing. He was like, and I was like, "Oh, dude, your work is fucking sick. Like, I'm really digging it." He's like, "Oh, thanks, man. Like, I really appreciate that." And like, shook my hand, and like, everything was cool. And we maintained a friendship. I did a lot of guest spots with him. Like, he's actually played a very valuable role in me continuing to tattoo at a certain point in my career and a certain point in my life. I had a really hard time, and he was super friendly and super genuine as a person outside of being a tattooer, and that helped keep me motivated. Teresa Sharp, she's another artist that I became friends with over the years, and she came from an art college kind of background, and really wanted to bring that academic knowledge into tattooing. And I guess to answer your question, this is a really long, drawn-out answer to the question as far as the differences. One of the main differences that I've noticed is, from my generation of tattooers, everybody was very open to sharing knowledge with each other with the common goal that we can all make tattooing the best that it could be. And I think that those collective goals from, in particular, that group of people, or not that group of people, but that generation of tattooers, was what was the springboard for what I believe contemporary tattooing to have come from. And I find it quite interesting when people are overly protective of that information and have this notion of gatekeeping it, because in a lot of ways, that's not to say that they didn't do the hard work to be able to achieve that, but they're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Why not share it? Like,
I have
each
no
other.
idea. I have no idea.
No, I totally
still
agree with
share
you.
it.
I agree.
still share it, you know.
You definitely
There's
do.
a lot of apprentices that I've come across, and I treat them like my peer, you know. That's not to say I may not treat them like equal in regards to, like, I know I have more experience as an artist. I know I have more experience as a professional. And I hold that in regard when I do interact with them, but I don't hold back from sharing information, because in my opinion, if I can share information with them to make them a better tattooer, I actually help to improve the quality of tattooing as a whole and as a business, because everybody that I help improve their skills, I help improve their interaction and communication skills. I help make for some stranger's experience to be enriching, because, you know, a year down the road, this person that I shared this technique about how to line a little bit better, how to, you know, pack color a little bit more solid, how to be a little bit more gentle and have a better bedside manner with your clients. I'm essentially helping to make other people's experiences a bit more enriching, and I feel better about that, you know.
It's almost like when you were saying when you lost your apprenticeship at the first job, when you said you didn't know if you wanted to be a tattooer forever.
Right.
But really what you're talking about now is kind of influencing people that will kind of go on to tattooing in the future,
right,
whether you would be alive then or not.
Right.
So in a way, even if you weren't still tattooing 23 years later now, you are being a tattooer forever in a way.
Yeah, absolutely, in a great degree. And it's weird because I never really thought about that. It wasn't really a motivation or a goal of mine. But so like I said at the beginning, I come from a graffiti background. I have been painting primarily in the Phoenix graffiti scene for most of my life. And in my crew, we recently lost a member. His name was Tame. His name was Jake. Jake was a real funny, really fucking good dude. And I used to talk to him all the time. He would call me on my phone or Instagram Live, or not Instagram Live, but, you know, I would talk to him, and I had these like face-to-face conversations, which was great because he would be calling me from Phoenix, and I'd be at home in Australia, and he would catch me up with the local beef and tell me about this guy that's dissing this guy, and this guy in the crew, like, he did this thing, and like, what do you think? Like, we're gonna have a meeting, and all this, you know, dumb bullshit, and it was always fun. But he would often tell me that these kids that were coming up, and they're not even kids now, they're adults, they're kids to me, but I'm in my 40s now, you know what I mean? So like when he'd say all these kids, he's talking about like 28, 32-year-old men, you know what I mean? But he would describe the way that they would paint and like the kind of techniques that they would apply to their work all throughout the city. And he would be like, dude, like, you've left this residual influence that has become ingrained into what people identify as Phoenix graffiti. Now, I never like held, I guess, too much water in that. Like, it never, like, I don't have a crown on my fucking head or nothing like that. I'm just a dude. Like, I've even talked about it just recently. Like, I just like to paint walls and barbecue with my friends. It's fun. And I want to do the best job that I can because I literally just enjoy looking at that stuff. But that example that Jake would tell me about with the graffiti is, I guess, essentially the legacy that I'm inadvertently leaving in tattooing, even if that's not what I'm consciously trying to achieve. Like, it's just a personality trait for me. More than anything, I think it's a personality trait, and it just happens to be a personality trait that translates well to the community that I interact with, because that community in a lot of ways is all about creating art, and I want to help them make the best art that they can, because from my experience, making good art is super satisfying and it's super fulfilling, and I want to share that feeling with as many people as I can, because fuck, like, you know, it's one of the most important aspects of like my human experience, is feeling enriched by the fact that I made these marks that, you know, have these series of movements that translate to something that I saw in my head, and I got it as close to that as possible. Yeah, it's a fucking incredible feeling, and I feel like I'd be a piece of shit if I didn't share that with people, if I didn't help other people achieve that, because it is not my experience. I'm just a fucking vessel. Like, you know, I'm just a vessel having this, you know, this terrestrial subjective experience. And if I'm keeping all of that to myself, like all of the time, then like that's completely in vain. And fuck that, dude. Fuck that. Like, and fuck anybody who does that, because that's just, it's not good people shit. Like, I want to be a good person because I want to be a good person, not because I want anybody to think that I'm a good person. Because when it's all said and done, and when I don't have any more breaths left, I don't want to go kicking and screaming. I want to be like, that was fucking dope.
I think that you're actually a pretty good teacher as well.
Cheers.
And like, I've been tattooing for nearly 9 years now, and I think when we met, I'd only been tattooing for maybe 3 or 4. And I still to this day think about things that you told me years ago that actually helped me further my career now. Like, I think that you're actually a really good teacher, and I think that you should not stop doing that. I think you should keep trying to teach people.
I'm glad that I was able to do that. I don't remember the specific things that I
can
told
tell you.
I would love to hear that. I would love to hear that.
Well, actually, you taught me a lot about tattooing, but I think the main things that I've taken away from what I learned from you was dealing with customers, because I came from a retail background. So yeah. I was taught customers always right. But a couple of times I knew that I was right, and I had a customer or a client trying to tell me, maybe we should do it this way. And I knew that that wasn't the way to do it. And I was panicking and freaking out because I was trying to please the client while also trying to do the right thing as a tattoo, because right. As we know now, the tattoo is the most important thing that comes out of it. And I would come out the back room at the time at the shop we were at, and I'd be like, oh my God, Adrian, I don't know what to do, because I know I should be doing this, but the client wants to do this. And you were just like, Jess, fuck them. In a much nicer way. You were like,
I probably wouldn't have said fuck them,
but
maybe I did. Maybe I did, like, fuck that shit. Yeah.
I think you were trying to talk. That's why I'm trying to say that you're a good teacher, because I think you were trying to talk to me on my level, and that's how I talk.
Right.
And so I think that you just knew that, and you were trying to say, listen, like, don't fucking worry about that. Like, you know, the tattoo is the most important thing that comes out of this. And while I still had to do the tattoo in the way the client wanted, because it's their tattoo,
sure,
I still had to do it right. And you were like, you know what to do. Stop being an idiot and just go and tell them what needs to be done.
Yep.
And so, like, I needed that, because I'm still a very panicky and anxiety filled person. And a lot of tattoo artists didn't know how to articulate that to me in the way that you did.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I was able to do that. I feel like my ability to be able to articulate words and enunciate, in particular, like the sentiments that I'm trying to convey, is something that I'm very grateful that I have access to in myself. I think that comes, you know, personally, I think that comes from living a life in situations that were often quite dangerous, without divulging too much information. Like, I didn't always live in a circle of circumstances that were completely legal. And often I found myself in situations that were quite dangerous with quite dangerous people. So I had to figure out a way to be able to convey my concerns with situations in a level-headed and reasonable way, to be able to make sure that I was able to get my concerns across while maintaining a calm vibe.
Well, it's really good that you describe it that way, because the shop that I started at before I met you, there were a lot of dangerous clients that came in. It was a shop in the ghetto. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of clients that would come in. It was right around the corner from a psychiatric hospital, and a lot of clients that would come in were not entirely mentally stable. And so I had experiences with clients before where I'd said the wrong thing and they'd lashed out at me, and that's where my anxiety came from. So by the time I met you, I was like, I'm so scared because I don't want them to stab me or something. And you were just like, okay, all you have to do is say it like this. And I knew that, but I just couldn't do it. And then you sort of calmed me down.
Practice. It takes, it takes a lot of experience of just interacting with people. I feel to this day, like I don't interact with a lot of those people anymore. Like there's a handful of them that I maintain deep friendships with, but I learned that really, really young in my tattoo career, that I had an ability to be able to level with people in a lot of ways.
I think it's an important thing to learn as a tattoo artist.
I agree. Whether or not it's necessary these days, it's hard for me to say, because
depending where you are, I think it still might be.
Depending where you're at, yeah, for sure.
Just as a person,
yeah,
communicate.
Yeah, as a person, being able to communicate, absolutely. Like it's. I think it's essential, but it's essential for the lifestyle that I want. It's essential for the experiences that I want, and I'm grateful for that, because going back to those sometimes dangerous people, sometimes those dodgy people that I ended up interacting with, I was able to build real friendships with people that in a lot of cases would not have opened themselves up to developing friendships or kinships with somebody, because of the fact that they were guarded, and they were guarded for the right reasons, because they were living a life that they had to be. One of my best friends, and I won't throw him under the bus, I won't say his name, but one of my best friends, I remember to this day, he was what we referred to as a problem solver or a cleaner. And I remember when we first started hanging out, some of my other mutual friends were like, yo, you're hanging out with that dude? Like, be careful. Like, that guy is really dangerous. I just hung out with that dude, like, not but a month ago. Like, I've known this dude for the better of 15 years. He went to my wedding. Like, he's one of my best, closest fucking friends. And, like, I know that dude is ride or fucking die. And I wouldn't have been able to have this kind of friendship with this dude had I not had the capacity to be able to express myself the way that I do. Because the fact that I was able to express myself in this way instigated and antagonized him to be able to, I'm probably using the wrong words. It pulled conversations out of him, upon which not only was I able to get to know him better, but he was able to get to know himself better. And I'm fully aware that that is a skill that not everybody has. So I try my best to be able to give as much of that as I can to young tattooers when I meet them, clients when I'm interacting with them. I mean, you were tattooing somebody today that I was able to be like, hey, I see that you're struggling. I have this little trick that I tell other clients or other people that are getting tattooed when they're struggling with the pain factor. Maybe try this thing and see if it helps you. And it did, That.
And what was that? What was your
I
tip?
told her to relax her butt,
Relax your butt muscles.
Relax your butt muscles, because that's,
It does really work.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so women who get tattooed, well, not just women who get tattooed, but a lot of times women hold their stresses and anxieties in their hips. Men hold our stresses and anxieties in our shoulders. So when men are struggling with that, I often tell them to relax their shoulders, relax their upper arms, relax their neck. But women, I prefer relax your butt, relax your hips, relax your lower back. And often that takes away from the tensity in their muscles.
Let go of the tension.
Let go of the tension, exactly. And
I think
it doesn't take away from the
advice.
pain. It doesn't take the pain away, but it just makes it something that your body is more apt to coping with, because you're giving it signals that, like, we're going to deal with this, you know?
It's relaxes the fight or flight mode.
For sure. Because that's really what we're doing, is we're battling the reptile brain. You know, it's this part of, like, you know, what is that part of the brain? The cerebellum or cerebral cortex?
I'm not sure which one.
I think it's the cerebellum. That's like that little bit that's in the back
The
of our brain.
pineal gland.
No, the pineal gland is a different thing. That releases. The pineal gland's different.
That's a third eye.
sure.
Let's not get into that.
That's for another podcast.
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
I think we are sort of running out of time, but I wanted to ask you before we wrapped it up, what well, I've got some, but maybe you have some fond memories of us, because like we've known each other for a long time. I mean, when I say us, I mean Ryan and I,
Yeah.
and obviously you and your wife Laura.
Yeah.
I feel like we've got some funny memories together.
For sure.
Maybe we could share some if you have any.
I have so many. I don't know if we have time for all of them. My wife is my best friend, and by far she's my best friend. She is one of the funniest people that I know, and she very much invites me to be the most honest and true version of myself. And sometimes that can be very challenging for her, but it's also very challenging for me, because that poses the question of, well, who really are you? And one of the things about me as an individual is that I very much enjoy film. Like, film is one of my favorite methods of expression. It's one of my favorite art forms. And some of my fondest memories of our friendship is the fact that we, for the last few years, we would take turns having a movie night, and we would go back and forth to each other's place, and each one of us would pick a movie. And sometimes, like, those movies would be grueling for one of us to watch, but we always did it.
That's the aim.
That's the aim. And it was it's
Which
always
one of
been
us can
fun.
we fuck up?
Which one of us can we fuck up? For sure. I remember we were watching that movie Mandy. When didn't we watch that on our projector? It's a Nicolas Cage one. Yeah, we projected it on, and we had this full projector screen, so it was really, really similar. It gave the sensation that we were in our own private movie theater.
Yeah.
And we would cook some food that, you know, we all enjoyed,
And you would make me my very own guacamole, because you know I hate coriander.
Yeah, or cilantro as we call it. You know?
Oh, sorry.
Which is
Yeah.
so crazy to me.
We don't
but,
say
like,
cilantro
whatever.
in Australia, but anyway,
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of the same. It's pretty much the same thing.
I just want your American friends to know that.
Yeah. But yeah, it would make your own guacamole, and like, yeah, I've always enjoyed those experiences, because it was indicative in those experiences that you guys also were inviting me to be like my most honest self. And that is very, not only is it super important, I'm very grateful when people are vulnerable enough in themselves to let me be myself, because that's me in my most vulnerable state. And when I'm in that vulnerable state, it is the most honest version of myself. And I know that not everybody in the world gets to have this experience where they can be their truth. And I'm working on that every day. So I appreciate you guys inspiring me and pushing me to be my truth.
So it's been a long day. I think we've been here since like 10, something like that.
Yeah, you've
Since
done a
10.
great job being tattooed. You
Yeah,
weren't
thank you.
whinging at all. Very good job.
I'll give you that extra 50 later.
No, I didn't.
But we're going to go get some pizza now, which I'm stoked about. I cannot wait. But thanks for being on the podcast, man. Sorry it was a little bit of a short one, but thanks for coming through. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity in the future to do some more, another movie night.
Yeah, for sure. I would love that, and I would love to have another go talking about AI in the world and in art and all of those things. It's a super interesting topic to me, and we'll leave you on that, and we'll leave a little cliffhanger. But
yeah, we'd definitely like to have you back if you'd like to come back. Don't start me. We need to document that time that you stabbed me at some point. Maybe that can be another cliffhanger.
That's the time that I stabbed you. You had it coming.
I did not.
Buck around and find out.